I was invited to speak here, I was a little bit confused because execution is a very wide topic, and I'm not an expert on execution. I'm not a startup guru. I'm not a serial entrepreneur with tens of companies under my belt. I'm just another guy, just like you, who has started just one company. And I decided that the best way to make it interesting, to add value to this event, is to speak about my field of knowledge, which is mobile gaming. And I think that mobile gaming is a very attractive industry, especially for young teams and small teams with limited budget, limited resources, because it's a huge market. It's very easy to go global in this industry, but it's still open to almost everyone. And for this to make sense, I'm going to use my company, Creative Mobile, as a case study of a very small team with very limited resources who are able to reach, I can say, global recognition without any external funding, without advice from industry gurus, basically with just our own hands and minds. First, I'd like to introduce Creative Mobile. It's a very young company. It was founded just 2 years ago. It's a talent-based startup, and we focus on free-to-play games for Android and iOS. And if I had to describe my company in just one sentence, it would be 85 million downloads, which means that our games have been played by over 85 million people all around the world during these 2 years. And I'm going to tell how this all started. It all began in 2009 when we, the three co-founders, lost our jobs because of the economic crisis and general pessimism in the industry. And after we lost our jobs, we sat down and thought, what should we do? We wanted to start a startup. And at the moment, everybody was talking about the App Store and how people made some simple apps and games for iOS, for iPhone, and these games and apps made millions, and people became so-called app millionaires. And there was another platform at the time called Android, and it was very small. There was only one device on the market. It was kind of geek-oriented, not very mainstream, not very popular. The market was tiny. So we looked at the booming Apple platform. We looked at the small and awkward Android platform and decided to make Android games. Very simple decision, because on the App Store, there were already all the big guys like Electronic Arts, Gameloft, big gaming companies with millions and millions of dollars in budget, and 10 years or more of industry experience. And on Android, the market was empty. There was no competition, and it was much easier to enter this market. So we decided to start things as small as possible, make very simple games for the smaller market, which was easy to enter, and then try to win some grounds and make some market niche our own. And at first we adopted this very same model that we thought worked on the Apple App Store, which was make premium games that cost 0.99 cents and make them as simple as possible, just put them on the market without any promotion, anything, and hope that people will, for some reason, love these games. So at the end of 2009, we made one game, which was very simple. We put a price tag on it. It failed miserably. I think only a couple hundred people bought it in the end. So this wasn't going to work, and we went back to the drawing table to figure out what should we do next. So we thought the game wasn't good enough. And we thought, maybe we should spend more time and make a better game. So we spent 6 months making a better game, and it failed. And at this point, we were almost desperate because we spent 9 months of our lives trying to do something for this new market. And we saw that there were other developers that were successful on this Android market, and we were not. So we decided to try something else. And we arrived at another business model, an ad-supported model, which basically means that we publish the games, give them away to everyone for free, and then show some banners in the game, and this is how we make money. And this started to work for us. We instantly started to make some money, just enough to rent an office, to hire a couple guys to work for us, and this started to look like some sort of ground where you can build a healthy business. So we developed this business model where we create very simple, very cheap games, release a new game every 1 or 2 months. These games are free, these games are ad supported. We don't provide any marketing support. We didn't know about anything about mobile marketing at the time. And we started to implement this business model. We made another free game, another very simple free game, and it was sort of successful as well. And after 2 games, we were making like 4,000 or 5,000 euros a month. And we continued along this path. We made a 3rd game, and it exploded. It was called drag racing, and this kind of game wasn't present on the Android market back then. So we kind of looked at the racing category on the Android market and noticed there were no decent racing games there. So we made a very cheap, very simple game, just 6 weeks of development, a team of 5, and got 40,000 downloads on the first day. And it continued to grow more and more and more, and soon we were getting 100,000 downloads a day. And this is when we faced the big challenges, because we realized that we can't continue to be this small bunch of friends sitting in a small office working at night, because we have to grow, we have to scale this success. And we started facing all kinds of difficulties. One of these difficulties was finding the right people to work for us, because as far as I know, until now, we are the only game developer in Estonia has reached this level of recognition. There are no other big players right now, and this is a big problem for newcomers, because where do you find experts if there is no industry in the country? So we started asking our old friends, looking outside of Estonia, headhunting, finding people one by one in Russia, in Ukraine, anywhere else, in Lithuania, bringing them here. And it took a lot of energy. Technical challenges, of course. We had a game running on a bunch of PHP scripts on servers that cost us $24 a month. And soon we had more than 1 million daily players. And this started to collapse, and we made all the mistakes we could possibly make, and we erased everything and built it again and again and again. Lots of technical problems with this rapidly growing game ecosystem. And we also had to change our mindset, because in the beginning we didn't think big. We thought about just making a small company, just big enough to make a living for ourselves, not to have to go to a day job. And then we realized we had this opportunity to go big, and we had to think big. We had to think about how we can achieve bigger goals. How do we scale this business? Because one successful product is good. How do we make another successful product? And this is where we arrived at something we internally call market-driven development. And here's the thing about these mobile gaming markets right now. They're different from the traditional gaming industry in many ways. And one of these ways is that players are not hardcore gamers. They are just ordinary people, like you, like me, like your mother, like my mother. Just random people who don't have any interest in games. They don't read gaming websites. They don't base their buying decision on reviews. So we had to make something these people want and somehow explain to these people that our product is the best. And we didn't have the money to do it, so we developed this strategy of making our products as attractive as possible on the surface. This involved the icon of the game and the title of the game. For example, when we developed our first successful game, it was a very simple game where just throw the basketball by flicking the screen of a smartphone. And we thought, how do we name this game to attract as much traffic as possible? And we name it Basketball Shots. It can't be any simpler. And on the icon, we put the basketball. When we made drag racing, we thought about this problem. How do you name a racing game so that people would instantly recognize that this is a racing game when they quickly scroll the App Store or the Android market? The attention span is like a few milliseconds. How do you stand out? So I thought, let's go drag racing and put a car on the icon. It can't be any simpler, and it worked. And without any investments in the beginning, we got lots and lots of traffic. And this is one of the key differences of mobile markets. The attention span of people is very short. They have thousands and thousands of applications on the market. I think there's more than 1 million of them if we combine the Android market and the iOS market. It's more than 1 million applications. And what these people, the customers and potential customers of our company, what they do, they just scroll through the list of top charts of the search results, and they, if anything catches their attention, they may click on it. It has to be very, very shiny, very, very attractive title and icon. Once inside the game, if they download it, you only have like 30 seconds to impress, because there's so many alternatives on the market. If you fail to impress within this short period of time in the very beginning, they just move on to something else. The variety of games for these platforms is so huge, you don't get a second chance. And another interesting aspect is monetization, because like I said, we make free games. How to make money? I already mentioned ads as a possible source of revenue. I love ads because they're very predictable. If you have, say, 1 million daily active users, and each one of them sees a banner or full screen ad in your application, you get a very consistent revenue stream, but it's not very big. To make the most of your audience, you need to provide something else. And this comes in the form of in-app purchases. I'm sure most of you have heard about it in one way or another. It's basically about offering the player some additional services or ways to make the game more exciting or easier at some point, like providing them with premium currency packs that they can purchase instantly to advance quicker in the game or gain an advantage. There are lots of emotional triggers and different emotions that can be catered to, and this is what defines the game industry right now, especially mobile. Freemium games within a purchase are making more money than paid games. Just think about free games making more money than paid games. And this trend continues. And even traditional publishers like Electronic Arts have very, very impressive history of releasing successful box titles for PCs and consoles. They're moving into this space, they're releasing free games, and they're making more and more money by providing stuff for free. And it's basically how supermarkets operate, in my opinion. It can be compared to shops. You let people in for free, and then inside you put goods in the right order, in the right places, in the right combinations. You play the right music while people are walking into a store with their cars, so they eventually buy stuff they need and stuff they don't need. So when they reach the checkout, they have their cars full. This is how freemium games work. And this is very much different from the traditional approach of game developers, because most game developers, especially those who are hardcore gamers, they think about some game mechanics, like, let's make this game with role-playing and shooting, and it's gonna be cool. On mobile, it can work, but most of the time it doesn't, because the audience doesn't care about your RPG and shooting and stuff. They want to have fun. And if they don't realize this is a fun game, instantly, it's not gonna work. So why we have adopted this market-driven development. What it means? It means that first we study the market. Before they think about some concept, we think about selling this concept to people. Can we name this game? Can we give it a title that will drive traffic? Yes, no. No, goes to trash bin. Can we monetize this game? Can we offer something inside this game to the players to make money? Yes, no. Again, if the answer is no, this isn't going to work. So before we arrive at the game mechanics, we have a number of questions to be answered. And in fact, it doesn't matter what kind of game is below these layers of monetization and socialization and all that. What matters is this distribution and monetization framework that you're operating within. And at this point, you may be asking yourself, what am I doing here? Why am I telling you this? In fact, these mobile markets are still very much open to everyone because the demand is exceeding the supply. Yes, now everybody has realized that Android is a big deal and all the big companies are moving into Android market and they are moving into the iPad market, making exclusive iPad apps with stunning graphics and so on. But the demand is still bigger because I believe there are more than 1 million devices being activated each day. The market is growing. Right now, the mobile gaming market is estimated at some 30-40 million euros. It's expected to grow 200% in 2-3 years from now. And I believe it's an amazing combination of ease of getting into the market and the potential of this market. Because if you get there, if you release one successful product, you get access to a huge audience. In our case, it's already 85 million people. And when people hear this number, 85 million, they ask, how much money you actually made from these people? That's a normal question to ask, but it's not the point. The point is that once you get access to such a big audience, you have a lot of opportunities. And there are literally hundreds of small game developers like us who gain this access to millions and millions of players. And this is a huge advantage and a huge privilege. Moreover, the markets are changing. If a couple years ago we were thinking about the US market and to a certain extent Western European market as two big places where you could make money, right now Asia is ahead of everyone else. I think the rates at which the number of smartphone users in China is growing year over year is somewhere in 200 to 300%, which is just crazy if you consider how many people are there in China actually and the potential of this market. The same can be said about developing countries, Brazil, for example, India, and so on. And these are people who are not yet spoiled by this technology. These are basically huge, huge markets that are open to everyone, or to those who can find the right ways to enter these markets. There are new platforms arriving. Everybody knows about iOS, everybody knows about Android. Almost everybody knows about Windows Phone, but people are still kind of cautious, like they don't know if it's going to work or not. But it's worth trying. I think the differences between laptops, for example, and tablet devices are becoming less and less obvious. And already you can run Android apps on many laptops. And this presents us with even more opportunities. TVs, smart TVs are kind of here, but not right here yet. There's a long way to go before the TV sets in average Joe's house become an equivalent of smartphone, tablet. But it's going to happen. So again, the opportunities are there for those who can be there and make cool apps and games for these smart TVs. If anybody saw, no, I'll put it in a different way. If anybody hasn't seen the Google smart glass demo, you should see it. It's really cool. It's a sort of technology that only attracts geeks right now, but who knows what happens next. So it's worth paying attention to. And this happens all the time in this industry. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the big guys said, what the hell is Android? Now Android is mainstream. It's the biggest smartphone platform with hundreds of millions of users. Huge market. And by just being here in this industry and keeping your eyes open, you can see lots of great opportunities to build a successful gaming company or an app developer with basically nothing. And I want to say it once again that the reason why I'm invited to speak here in the first place is because we are a self-funded company. We're just 3 guys sitting in a small room, just writing some stuff, coding some stuff, drawing some stuff. Nobody wanted us. The investors didn't want us. We were unknown. Then at some point we have 80 million downloads. And everyone's like, wow, this is absolutely possible. There's nothing to stop anyone from doing the same, pulling off the same trick. You don't need to be in the Silicon Valley. You don't need to have 10 million investor back before you even create your product. You don't have to be visible in the press. You just have to think very carefully about your target audience and what these people want, and do stuff quickly and iterate on it and do stuff again. You know, if things don't work, try something else, and again and again. That's what we did. And this works. This works for everyone. It may take some time, but you know, Rovio made 52 games before they made Angry Birds. So it's worth trying. And if you think about the future again, there are new platforms, there are new markets, there are new players. And this wide penetration of mobile devices and mobile games, and also casual social games, some people say that it's killing the traditional gaming industry. I think it's actually converting more and more people into gamers. People who didn't think they're going to play on their smartphone begin playing. And this market is going to be one of the biggest markets you can think of in the future. So it's worth trying. I think that's all I had to say for today. I hope you have some questions for me to answer.
All right, thanks a lot. Any questions from the public? All the way in the back. We give the mic to the back.
Are you frustrated about the fact that Rovio can call their game something awesome like Angry Birds and not flying birds into pigs? That would be the straightforward approach. You talked about that we're going to name the game something really simple and it'll work.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. No, there's no reason for me to be frustrated because I think we reached the point in our development where we can do the same thing. And but the situation was quite different when Rovio launched Angry Birds. It was 2008, I guess, and it was the beginning of this smartphone application boom. There was not many games on the market, and I'm not underestimating the quality of their game or of their achievement. It's incredible, but they delivered this product at the right time, in the right place. If they release Angry Birds, I think, let's say 2 years later, the situation would be different. Because 2 years later, there were so many apps on the market, it would be so much more difficult to stand out. And this piece of advice about, naming your game in a simple, in an easy to understand way, this is a way of getting noticed. You can try to name your game, I don't know, use your first and last name to create a global brand. It's up to you. But it's always easier if whenever the potential player sees your game, the very same moment he recognizes what it's about, it just helps you.
In the middle? Maybe you have to forward the mic. behind the camera.
I have a question about fears. So I heard that you got laid off. So where's the first step if I don't get laid off? I'm a working person and I would like to be an entrepreneur. I would quit my job and I'm like, oh hell, where I'm gonna get my money and how can I survive? I have a home to pay for, all that.
Yeah, that's scary. That's scary. I can't say any encouraging words. Unfortunately,
Damn.
I mean, I want anyone to be an entrepreneur. I want to encourage people, but of course, if you put so much at risk, I mean, it's not a good idea. I always wanted to be to have my own company. I wanted it since I was at school, but I didn't have the guts to quit my job until the opportunity was presented. But then again, I didn't really know what to do because I had this desire to create something original. But where do you start? And even after we lost our jobs and started working together, it took us a year and a half to figure out what do people want. So it's important to think forward and make sure you have enough depth. So if you quit a job, make sure you have enough money to, support your life for a year or two. If you think you are going to be successful in a year from now, you need to have the budget for at least 3 years, I think, because it never happens the way you plan it. You need to make sure you can stand the pressure of your friends and family, because this happened to me to a certain extent. I think it happens to everyone, because success doesn't come overnight, and people are looking at you and saying, "What are you doing? Games? Come on, get a real job." And that's what everybody gets, not necessarily in the gaming industry, everybody who starts their own business. So to alleviate the fear, just make sure your plan ahead, it never hurts, and it's worth it anyway. I mean, if you have your day job, you are never going to have 80 million customers or 80 million in the bank or whatever your goals are. Basically, that's the only way, if that's what you desire.
All right. Anybody else? Tristan.
So I love the story. I mean, thank you so much for
Thanks.
sharing it, because it's always nice to hear these like real stories about somebody struggling and iterating past their failure multiple times. So my question is just almost platform based. So you started on Android, but now you're making games for iPad and iPhone, yeah?
The strategy is to focus on Android because this is our home ground and this is where we have most of our users. So on Android, it's much easier for us to try stuff because we have lots of traffic and it's, we feel more comfortable there.
Okay.
Of course, iOS is also a high priority. But I can tell you that we are also focusing on Windows Phone, kind of lower priority, but we want to be there sooner rather than later. And we have at least one game that targets almost every platform out there.
So my main question was, in terms of iterating very quickly, as you say, so testing a name and then testing another name and then testing another name, do you find that's a lot easier on Android because they don't have the App Store barrier to releasing? And what do you think of now the Windows platform and their App Store?
I think it's still easier on Android, exactly for the reason you mentioned. You can publish stuff almost for free, or you pay once your developer fee of $25, then you can publish as many apps as you want. You don't have any pre-moderation. You don't need to make brilliant applications. You can just, I'm not encouraging it, but theoretically you can put an empty application on the App Store with a name that you think is going to work, and you can just try to see if that name drives any traffic. It's a little bit harder right now because when we started out, there was a category on the Android market that was called Just In, and it listed new applications just arriving into the App Store, so it was possible to get some visibility. Now it's not there. So now you have to have some some initial push to drive at least some people into your application. But still, it's easier than on the App Store, because on the App Store, of course, you have to convince Apple that your product is not worthy, and it takes a little more to get this done. In brief, I love Android, so I can't put it in a simpler way. I think it's much easier to start on Android right now, and it's still less competitive if we think about the competition. There are challenges, like the notorious fragmentation, for example, and 2,000 devices out there, but these are, in my opinion, not a big problem for a small company. Just spend a couple evenings thinking about best practices for Android programming and reading some manuals, and you can do it. For a big company, yes, they'll spend $100,000 on corporate meetings, deciding what is the best strategy to tackle fragmentation and so on. It never gets done. For a small company, it's more of an advantage. So, Android for the win. Speaking about Windows Phone, I'd love to share my insight, but I don't have it because we haven't released on the Windows Phone yet. So it's more like theoretical knowledge. I can say that there is a very poorly done copy of Drag Racing, of our own Drag Racing game, on the Windows Phone, and it has, according to our estimates, from 100 to 200,000 downloads a month, which if it had an average monetization of 0.2, 0.3 dollars per user, that would be some in the region of $50,000 per month, which is enough to build some sort of business out of it. So it looks like Windows Phone is getting ready to be a big platform, but nobody knows, of course, how it does later. It has all the right components in place, and I think it's worth looking at the Windows Phone marketplace and seeing if there are any open niches in this market, and if there are, it's a good idea to be there, because if it takes off, you're lucky. If it doesn't, okay, it was a nice try. And but if you want to make an original product with lots of features that's gonna revolutionize the whole mobile industry, you should start where the audience is, where the most of people are. It's kind of obvious. So my vision of Windows Phone, it's very much worth following and being there if the opportunity is presented. But it's not a big player right now, but it has all the right traits to become one in a couple of years from now.
Cool. Any other questions for the rest in the back?
I have a question.
Take the mic.
About the future of gaming business. I mean, you probably have some ideas what will happen. Would you like to say something that we will see in 20 years from now?
Oh, that's a long shot.
Glasses.
Frankly, I have no idea what happens in 20 years from now, because thanks to game founders, I met a guy from the gaming industry who started his career in 1975, I think. Is that right? Now he's vice president of Eidos, which is part of Square Enix, a major publisher, and the guy has had an amazing career with titles such as Tomb Raider, Hitman under his belt, and many other strong franchises. And he was telling about his career, and he couldn't have possibly imagined in 1975 what happens in 10 years. It doesn't even make sense to try to guess what happens, because the changes are so dramatic. If I was asked to say what happens in the next 2 years, for example, I can try with some confidence, although I don't know. Yeah. I think it's going to be big. It's going to be bigger than now. I think mobile will be even more dominant. I think mobile games, games for smartphones and tablets, will be making much more money than they're making right now. I think the number of gamers in the world will increase. So It's not that I'm optimistic by nature. It's just that everything is suggesting that this industry is going to be great in the next few years. After the next few years, probably something new will happen, like it happened when the iPhone was released. The market changed instantly. The landscape changed. Then when Android appeared in 3 years later, I think 5 years later, it changed the landscape again. I think in 2 or 3 years from now, something will emerge and change the landscape. But the basics will be the same. People are playful by nature, so people will play. And there will be lots of opportunities for talented developers to entertain these people and get compensated for that. I know I should probably speak about some trends like shift from traditional console gaming to mobile gaming, stuff like that, but I don't think it's that important. What is important is that if you keep your eyes open, in this industry there are lots of opportunities, and in 2 years there will be even more opportunities. That's what I think.
All right, let's close it with this. A big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vladimir.